Today is a good day because we are entering part 2 of my Makeup for Mature Skin series. In part 1, we covered how to get that flawless base with your foundation and your concealer. And today is really where the fun begins. I'm going to be going over where to put your bronzer, your contour, your highlighter, proper blush placement to really lift and sculpt the face. Makeup can sometimes be overwhelming, and especially as the skin matures, it doesn't always take it on the same way that it used to. So, I'm going to show you how to update your makeup routine to enhance and highlight your features. I'm also going to cover some of the common mistakes I see with this part of your makeup, because if you don't know what you're doing wrong, sometimes it's hard to do it right. So we're going to teach you what to do and what not to do. And if you haven't seen the first video in this series, make sure you watch it. I will link it in the description box because everything that we're going over today will look even better if your base is prepped the right way. Music, by the way, I'm Dr. Sam Ellis. I am a board-certified dermatologist based in Northern California and a lover of all things beauty. And it is my favorite thing in the world to share my tips and what is anti-aging makeup, tricks to help you level up your skin, your hair, your nails from both a medical and aesthetic perspective. I share new videos here every single week. So, if you want healthy, glowing skin and honest expert advice, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and you're subscribed to the channel. Okay, let's talk makeup here. You can have the most beautiful skin in the world, but if your blush placement is too low, or your bronzer placement is imprecise, or you're just using a product with the wrong texture for your skin, it can make you look older. It can make you look more tired, or just like not the best version of yourself. And here's really where my dermatologist brain kicks in. As a cosmetic dermatologist, I am constantly evaluating aging faces and thinking about ways we could potentially adjust or tweak things because the cheeks are lower, maybe the temples are more hollow, we have more lines and folds, and those same adjustments can be made to your makeup. There is no reason you should be using the same makeup techniques and application that you did 20 years ago because your features are in a different place and we need to meet your face where it's at. Makeup is incredible because you can play with lights and shadows. The same thing I would do with my patients with perhaps filler or Botox. You can actually recreate with makeup if you're putting your products in the right place, you're using the right textures, and you're layering products the right way. So, that's what we're discussing today. And really, what we're focusing on is adding dimension to the face in the right places. So, if you watched my first video, we talked all about how to get that foundation on, the concealer on to get everything super even. But now it's time to go back in and add lights and shadows in the places we want them to highlight our best features. So the how to use light and shadows first thing we're going to go over is highlight. And I'm not talking about like a shimmery highlight that you put on your cheek. I'm talking about using a concealer that is about one shade lighter than your natural skin tone or your foundation to give the illusion that certain parts of your face have less shadowing. And this is so important as you mature because as your face gets older, you start to get hollow in certain places. You start to notice more folding and shadowing at the base of the nose, certainly under the eye. I don't know anyone over 40 who's in love with their under eye, and definitely around the mouth as well. It's when you start complaining about things like marionette lines or just looking a little bit more harsh in photographs. And so, we can use highlighting to bring those areas forward and make them look less harsh and less shadowed than they actually are. So, where are we going to place this highlighter? It's going to vary a little bit from person to person, but some pretty consistent wins for people are placing it right on the inner corner of the eye because as we age, the bony structure of our eye widens, our eyeball sinks back into our head, which is just such a lovely thought. And so you get more shadowing around the eye. That's something that contributes to dark circles. So if you place a little bit of highlight just on kind of the inner corner as well as the outer corner where you get the deepest shadows, that's a way to add brightness to that area without needing a ton of product. Another place this can be really beneficial is at the base of the nose. This is called the piriform fossa. It's actually a place I will put filler in a lot of women because when that bony structure of our skull is shrinking, it's not just around the eye. It also happens at the base of the nose. And so, the nose starts to actually fall back into our skull a little bit. And so you get this deep shadowing at the base of the nose that starts to contribute to that nasal labial fold, or that smile line that we all start to see. And so, if you put a little bit of light-colored concealer at the base of the nose, and even walk it a little bit along that nasal labial fold, or that smile line, you can give the illusion that that area is not as deep or as shadowed. The other place that can really benefit from this technique is actually around the mouth. So in two areas, right under the lower lip, so under the corners of the mouth, because we get more shadowing as the mouth turns down, and we start to see those early signs of a jowl. And there's also something called the chin shadow, which I think of as like two fingerprints here and here, where we lose a bit of fat and a bit of bone. So everything looks recessed. So if you put a little bit of lighter colored concealer in those areas, it gives the illusion that it's brought forward. These are two other areas where we often will put a tiny bit of filler to reduce those shadows. But if you're not using filler, why not use your makeup to serve that purpose? In order to get this highlight to look really natural, like it's just like light bouncing off your skin and not actually makeup, I think you need to apply such a thin layer and then blend it super well. I love this little concealer brush. This is the Angie Hot and Flashy collab with BK Beauty. I think this is a genius brush. It's like a little dense paw that you can just really press and blend everything into. Because the other key with makeup, not just makeup for mature skin, but any makeup, is to not have any harsh lines. And anywhere that we put this highlight, we do want to set it with the smallest amount of powder. Go back to my first video if you don't know my powder technique, because it is key to making the skin look natural and not cakey, especially if you have mature skin. But we just want to make sure we're setting it so that we're not getting emphasis of the wrinkles and folds and shadows that we were initially trying to camouflage. Once your highlighter is in place, it's time to bronze and contour. And I really like to do this as a combined step. I don't have a separate contouring product and a bronzing product. I find that most mature skin benefits the most from bronzing and sort of warming up the complexion. When you contour, you're usually using something that is either neutral or cool tone to give the illusion of shadow on the face. But with mature faces, you often already have too many shadows or the shadows aren't in the right place. So, we use the highlight to eliminate shadows where we don't want them. And then we just use bronzer with a mild contouring effect, which I'll teach you how to do to warm up the complexion. And I feel like this looks a lot more natural. When we are bronzing, which I think, by the way, looks beautiful on mature skin, we're really thinking about where would the sun naturally hit our face and cause a tan. And since I know you're wearing your sunscreen every day, you don't have a real tan. So, let's fake it. The first place I like to apply my bronzer is at my hairline. I feel like that gives me a good sense of like how dark is my bronzer. It's right on the front of my face, so I can really see it. It's not hidden in the shadows on the side of my face. And I really start right at my hairline on my forehead. And I will kind of dapple it into my hairline, so it's nice and seamless. And then about a third of the way down my forehead. Now, a lot of people, when they're taught to bronze, they're taught to make this figure 3 where you kind of go along your forehead, your temples, your cheeks, and then in front of your ear, and down your jawline. I would encourage you, if you have more mature features, to skip bronzer in your temple area. Our faces naturally hollow out here. It's another place we put filler for people as they get older, or do a fat transfer. So, we don't want to put anything dark in this area because it's going to make it look more shadowed. So, definitely skip your bronzer there. And then when it comes to applying our bronzer in the cheek and the jawline area, that's where I kind of like doing that combined bronzing and contouring at the same time. So, for your cheek, you're going to find your cheekbone. You can either put your fingers right under your cheekbone, or sometimes it's easier with a finger this way and you can kind of feel where you roll over your cheekbone, and then you're going to be right under it. You should not place your bronzer, your contour, or anything under your finger. You want to be above your finger and then buffing upward and outward. It is such a common mistake that people apply their contour or their bronzer too low, and it starts to look muddy. It can start looking a little bit beard-like. So you really want to keep it up high on your cheekbone. And feeling for your cheekbone is the best way to do that. Do not guess. Really feel it there. I also think another mistake people make is they are not precise with their bronzer or their contour placement. They buff it all over the place. And part of that has to do with the fact that they're using way too big of a brush. This is like my favorite size for bronzer. It's about the width of like 2 fingers. This is the BK 115. So good for like a cream bronzer. I'll talk about my bronzer preferences in a second. Or, if you want to do like a powder bronze, I really like the BK 107. Again, about the size of like 2 fingers, and it allows you to get a good swath of product without it just blowing out all your features. So, you're going to stay nice and high along your cheekbone, blending upward only so that this area under your cheek stays nice and bright, because this is another area that we hollow out as we get older. And then I do recommend a small amount of contour along the jawline. Especially if you're starting to get jowly, you're really going to want to put your bronzer, and I usually recommend a cream product for this, like right over your jaw. So you're going to find the edge of your jaw, and then you're going to go right above it. And you're just going to buff, 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 buff. And the key here is that you buff it not only over that little jowl that you're trying to camouflage, but that you go under your jawline and all the way down your neck. The last thing you want is thinking that you have this great contour, and then you get into bright lights, and it looks like you're rocking a chin strap. So, you really want to make sure that you're giving the illusion of shadow that goes all the way down the neck. Don't do it on the center of your neck, but just on the sides here. It will look so pretty. It's also going to make your jawline look a lot sharper. So, another thing that happens as we age is we start to lose this definition at the angle of the jaw. So, if you have a little bit of bronzer or contour, sort of that medium shade, you can kind of run it all along these areas and then buff down the sides here, and that's going to make that area appear more recessed, and it's going to give you that sharpness that you probably used to have and are starting to lose. Now, when it comes to bronzing products, I definitely have a few faves. You absolutely don't need to use the products that I recommend. But if you've struggled with your makeup application, or you don't feel like it's been looking as good as you'd like, you want to make sure that you're using good products that are going to help you reach your goals. So, one cream bronzer that I think is phenomenal is the Makeup by Mario. It's their Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer, and this is shade light medium. They have a good shade range. This is not the lightest shade, and I feel like it's such a good medium tone bronze. It's not too cool. It's not too warm. It's certainly not orange, which I think is another huge mistake with bronzer. If you get one that's too orange, it will make you look trashy, dare I say. And so having this really beautiful tone is super helpful. But then also, it's the texture that I think is gorgeous. The way it blends on the skin is just effortless. It looks very skin-like. It doesn't look too glowy or too oily. It's not shiny. It doesn't dry matte or get patchy. It is just perfection in my opinion. Also, I would definitely categorize this as like makeup for dummies. Not that any of you are dummies, but if you're like newer to makeup and you want products that are just going to blend really effortlessly, you don't have to have a lot of artistry to make them look good. This is that for like a daytime look or just like day-to-day makeup. I usually prefer a cream bronzer like this. It just goes on really well. It's great for mature skin because mature skin tends to lean dry and can look a little bit dull, and so this adds some natural radiance and luminosity. However, I do love a powder bronzer as well. Actually, for a lot of my YouTube videos, I'm wearing a powdered bronzer, or if I have a conference or I need my makeup to last all day, I do find that powdered bronzers have a little more lasting power. Also, if your mature skin leans combination to oily, you might like a powdered bronzer better. And my absolute favorite is from Hourglass. It's their Luminous Bronze line. This is Luminous Bronze Light to match my skin tone. It's very dimensional, which I really think is cool. There's a little bit of sparkle in here, but it's not glittery, so it makes your skin look lit from within. It is gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Does not emphasize texture whatsoever. And you can just dust it on the same way you would dust on that cream product at the hairline, tops of the cheeks, jawline. So beautiful. If you guys have a holy grail bronzer that you are obsessed with, let us know in the comments. Especially if you have mature skin, like what is working with your skin. Okay, and lastly but certainly not least, we have blush. This is such an essential how to use blush as you age part of youthful looking makeup, and it's one of those things that will either make or absolutely break your makeup routine if you put it in the wrong spot. As your face ages, everything falls down and inward. Your under eyes do it, your cheeks do it, your jowls do it, and the key when you're applying your blush is not to apply it too low where your cheek is currently sitting, but rather apply it much higher. And a little bit further out where your cheek used to be to give that illusion of youth. And I'm not saying, oh my gosh, we're trying to look super young when we do our makeup. We want you to look like you. But there is no reason to emphasize with blush the fact that your cheek has fallen down. I think the easiest way to do this is to find the outer portion of the colored part of your eye. So the outer portion of your iris, and you're going to start your blush placement right about there. And then you're going to work a little bit upward and a little bit outward, blending it into both your under eye concealer and the top of your bronzer. When you place your blush here, you are emphasizing something called the OG curve. This is a term that we use in cosmetics to describe the highest point on our cheek and where that point sort of transitions into the hollow of our cheek. And it is very useful to have a high and emphasized OG curve. And so placing your blush here gives that illusion. Now, of course, I am also taking into consideration the shape of people's faces. So, blush placement is certainly not universal, but going a little bit higher and a little bit wider than you might think usually is going to be more flattering on a mature face. Now, when it comes to my favorite blushes for mature skin, I have so many. I am a blush connoisseur, so I tried to narrow it down for you. I generally prefer a cream blush just because I feel like it gives that natural glow to the skin. Again, not that you can't use a powder blush, but you have to be careful that it doesn't emphasize your pores or your texture. One of my all-time favorite blushes, especially for daytime, is the CL Tint and Protect SPF 50. This is gorgeous. And what I like about it is that it also falls into that like makeup for dummies category where you can put it on anyway. You can put it onto a brush. You can literally take it out of the tube and dab it on your skin, and it will blend out into perfection. And so it's just a very easy blush to work with and looks so natural. This is one of my favorite colors that they have, shade Bahati. But the colors that they have are also just so beautiful. If you do have really oily skin, I don't feel like this will have the same lasting power on you. In which case, may I recommend the Rare Beauty liquid blushes. These really last. If you just have a problem with your liquid or cream blushes fading throughout the day, or just any blush you put on, these are incredible. They're highly pigmented, though. So what I recommend doing is putting a little bit on like the back of your hand or the back of like a palette and then going in and dipping your brush in before you put it on your face. If you put it straight on your face, you're going to end up with like a streaky application. It's going to be oversaturated in certain areas. And in general, that is my recommendation for blush. You should apply some to the back of your hand first, work it into the brush so you have a nice even application, and then go in and work in fine layers. Sorry for the light change. The sun is setting, but I have one more cream blush that I have to tell you about. The Tower 28 blushes are gorgeous. You will see with all of mine, the palettes are like a little gross because what I like to do is pick up product here and then kind of buff it here if I don't want to get my hands dirty. But these are stunning blushes. They give like creamy luminosity. This shade office hours for fall and winter. But also one of the best shades I think is Magic Hour. It's just sort of this like your skin, but better slightly nude. I mean, this is my like maybe third of this blush because one I've gone through, and then the other two I have to keep in separate bags because I don't ever want to be without it. Once you are done with your makeup, the last thing to do is just check that everything is blended. The key with mature makeup is there are no harsh lines or edges. And honestly, I think this is true of all makeup, but it's going to be particularly unflattering the more mature your skin is. So it can be really nice to take a clean beauty blender or even like a clean makeup brush and just kind of like dab and buff over these areas. That's going to help you maintain the precision of where everything has been placed, but also make sure there is no harshness. Sorry if there's background noise. I have dinner party guests arriving like right now. So I'm going to go greet them. But the last and final step I like to do is take my Hourglass ambient powder and kind of swipe all the colors together and buff it over my entire face. I feel like it gives this beautiful glow to the skin without making you look oily or shiny. It also acts to sort of set things in place without having to apply a heavy powder. I talked about this in my first video for mature makeup as well, because I think it's such a helpful tip, and it just again, Hourglass is so good about this. It gives you this lit from within radiance that just makes your skin look healthy. Oh my gosh, there is literally like a carnival above my head right now. And I think with that, this video is done. Those are all the things I recommend for a mature complexion to add structure and warmth back to the face without looking overdone. Hopefully, you picked up a couple of tips and tricks. If anything really spoke to you, let us know in the comments. I love hearing your feedback. And I'm curious if you've tried any of the products that I recommended. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. The next video in this mature makeup series is all about the eyes and the brows. How to lift, enhance, brighten. I have so many amazing tips for you, and I cannot wait for you to watch it. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you next time.